Hi everyone, Amma from Lead365 here, and I'm coming back to you with the second of our Lead365 conversations. So here we talk to people who are using leadership in their everyday lives as educators, as practitioners, as business owners, as people that are making leadership happen out in the world. And today we have Lauren Irwin, who is a coordinator of leadership. Say hi, Lauren.
Hello, everyone.
So I'm going to let Lauren introduce herself a little bit, let you know who she is, and then we can get into her main topic of leadership, which is servant leadership, or leadership and social justice. So first, Lauren, if you could tell us a little bit about your early experience, so either in college or maybe even going back to high school, that let you know that you might have a future in student leadership.
Definitely. So currently, I just started work 3 weeks ago after finishing my master's degree. So I now serve as the coordinator for leadership and service at California Polytechnic State University in San Luis Obispo. So how I got into leadership, growing up, I played a lot of sports, primarily softball. And I was kind of always really fascinated into what made good teams work, right? So teams are really this collection of different individuals, what made them successful, what made them stand out. And so I was lucky enough to be on several really great teams. And it was kind of always this thing that I thought a lot about. And so when I went to college, suddenly I went to a new environment where I didn't know anybody and I didn't have my team, so to speak, anymore. And so I spent a lot of time kind of trying to find where my niche would be, maybe who my people and who my team would be. And so I was lucky enough to be hired as an RA, like a lot of young people who eventually go into student affairs. And I found myself surrounded by incredible people who were really passionate and felt really confident about what they were doing and felt really strongly about making positive change. And so long story short, one thing led to another that led to other leadership positions. And it just provided me with a lot of time to reflect on who I was as a leader. What did it mean to be a leader, especially in a non-hierarchical role? Because it's not like one of us was president RA and somebody else was something else. We were all kind of this team together. And so eventually that led me into pursuing student affairs at Michigan State University to do my master's degree. And one of the first big projects we had was a literature review in our student development theory class with Dr. Chris Wren. And so I remember talking to her and I was like, I think I want to do something about leadership. And she was like, you definitely should. You should run with that. And so she encouraged me really to start to think about leadership in a academic sort of sense. And so since then, I've never looked back. It's really been where I felt most excited, most passionate, where all the things I really care about seem to intersect. So that's kind of how I got to where I am today.
Tell us a little bit about, and I know you've only been there 3 weeks, so it's a pretty new start at this point, but about how those experiences are informing the work that you're doing right now. So what are you doing? How are you using it? And how do you kind of see it being a little bit helpful down the road?
Yeah, lots of great questions. So like I said, I've been here about 3 weeks. So not only am I new to the job, but the job is brand new and the center is also brand new. So I am making all of it up from scratch, which is basically my dream. It's perfect. But I think that those experiences really help me think about how we can help students find their passions and how leadership should really be something that feels like authentic and something that is very true to who you are as an individual. And so what my vision or what I'd really like to do is to kind of foster this new concept of T-shaped individuals or T-shaped professionals. So it's this idea of people or students who are well-versed across a variety of fields, right? So the top of the T with depth in one system or field kind of being the taller part of the T. And so I would really like to find ways to bring that into leadership development to help explore the intersection of leadership and social justice to really help students succeed during their time in college and beyond. And so that's kind of where I would like to continue to take my work and my research. And so bringing my own experiences individually as someone who has explored my own leadership development and is still developing, working with students, doing some academic research, really like to continue to put that into practice. So some of the things we're exploring, because not a lot exists yet, is doing some leadership seminars, kind of cohort-based, one specifically for first-generation college students, and then another one open to more traditional college students, possibly a leadership certificate, partnering with different people across campus to really make sure that we're addressing the intersectionality of leadership, right? So not just like leadership as something that is only held by presidents, but maybe for emerging leaders or for students of color, all those different types of things. So I have a lot of hopes, and that's kind of what's on the docket for fall quarter.
Before we jump into your leadership style and the parts of it that you find to kind of rev you up the most and get you the most excited, I want to go back to the part that you mentioned about it being a brand new position.
Yeah.
And coming into a role where you've kind of had the opportunity to be in somebody else's shoes and maybe had some help in the transition. So what are you learning as far as being a leader where there has been no path before?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing that I've brought into this position is like just acknowledging up front that I am not an expert in everything, right? There are so many people who have so much more knowledge about Cal Poly as an institution, about different parts of leadership, right? So I love leadership. I've studied it a lot, but there are lots of people on this campus who have a lot more knowledge and practice doing leadership development for students of color, for women, talking about the intersectionality of some of those things. So I've really kind of approached it in a sense of how can I help you, right? So not here's what I'd like to do, can you please get on board and help me with this, but understanding first what other people are doing and ways that they would like us to help supplement what they're doing and address the needs of their students. So really trying to be a sponge and really starting by listening. And I'm really lucky that my supervisor is completely on board for that. During my interview process, I asked him, you know, what do you want me to accomplish in the first couple of months? And he said, I just want you to talk to people and build relationships. So that's kind of my starting point. And I think that my leadership style is very relationally focused, and starting with kind of an understanding of who I am and then figuring out how that connects with other people to find that common purpose and common language. So that's been my approach for the last 3 weeks. And I think it's been going okay so far.
Okay, so, and I think that's something that's really important is that a lot of us, after we've left a leadership position and get brought into something, our first instinct is, what can I do? How can I help? What needs to be changed? What am I doing? And I think that there is a lot of listening and a lot of watching and a lot of learning that process needs to start with before you start deciding, here's the mark I'm going to make on things, is really learning what am I making a mark on. So I'll be very interested to keep following you and that journey and see how it goes.
Yes, I'd love to continue to share. So thank you.
No problem. So now let's jump into your main event. So you like to look at the intersection of leadership development and social justice. And social justice is a term that's coming up a lot more. It's a little bit more accessible to the media, so more and more people are learning about it. But just to start with a definition, what does social justice as a concept mean to you?
Yeah, I think that answer changes every day. And I don't think that there's necessarily one right answer. So the way that I think it's been most important when I think about it and talk to other people is the ability to live authentically, I guess. So less about like, how are we striving for equal opportunity? Because I think that's problematic, but maybe how are we recognizing how different systems and identities and privileges are intersecting and interconnected and influence one another. So I guess what I would really strive to do, at least in the concept of this role, is to help students and people and even myself continue to understand and explore what that's like, so we can better kind of recognize our own privilege, our own identities, our own lens, and I guess be more receptive and open and understanding to where other people are coming from, to put it in a nutshell. Yeah.
Sure. So what does that nutshell look like on the outside? Like what sorts of situations or maybe news stories or things like that could show us what paying attention to social justice or how social justice appears in everyday life? Like, how does the definition that you have appear in real life?
One of the first things that comes to mind is Ferguson and a lot of the events and media attention that has gone around that. And so last year when I was still at Michigan State University working with some other colleagues of how do we even provide a space for students to talk about this, and showing them that maybe even engaging in that dialogue and just having conversations is a form of leadership, right? So recognizing where you come from, learning about why this is important and why things like Ferguson and issues of race and power and class and all of those things, why they matter to you, whether or not you want to be a police officer, whether or not you live in Ferguson, no matter what you're doing. So I guess really trying to make it relatable and applicable and showing how these experiences relate to affect all of us regardless of our identities. That would be kind of my first example.
Okay, so can you think of a time that you've maybe had the opportunity to interact with students or fellow staff members where you've seen these principles in action?
Definitely. So another example for Michigan State, I was really lucky to get to intern with one of their kind of social justice peer education programs. It's called EMERAL, or the Multiracial Unity Living Experience. And after I left UCLA, coming to Michigan State, conversations and discussion of social justice just look very different on those campuses. And so it was really great to find a community of students who I felt were really advocating and involved in discussions of social justice and leadership. And so these groups of students, every week they had a seminar, which was kind of like their staff meeting, but talked about different social justice issues. So they led discussions about Syria, about how we could have discussion across religion, race, class, power, you name it, they talked about it. They taught me more in those 10 weeks that I probably learned about social justice anywhere else. And then they went and they took the different topics they learned and they facilitated dialogues across campus every week for groups of students. And so I was just really amazed by kind of the vulnerability they were willing to show. You know, they would come in and a lot of times people were like, I have a very strong opinion about what this means and what this has looked like based on my own experiences. But because they were able to, I guess, kind of have that rapport and relationship to start with and that willingness to be vulnerable, they were really able to understand like, wow, the way I think about race growing up in a small town, white in a small town in Michigan, looks very different from someone who grew up as a person of color in New York City. And having conversations about that and then talking about how they would apply that and help their mostly first year students that they were interacting with use that to navigate Michigan State University and the university system. So I think those students are ones that I really admire and really inspired me to continue to think about this more. Yeah, they helped me be a better educator.
That's awesome. I think it's great when we come across students like that that are willing to put themselves out there and do the hard things. And these are hard conversations to have because they go very deeply to who you are as a person. So it's more than just what you know or who you know or how you operate in the world. It's who you are. So these are really difficult conversations.
Exactly.
So as we are speaking to students that may be watching this, students that are looking to kind of incorporate this into their style, what are some steps that you would recommend that they take to kind of ease into incorporating social justice into their leadership? I mean, not everybody's going to be able to facilitate these conversations for everybody, but recognizing some of the issues that come along with it and making sure that the way in which they lead is cognizant of those things. What would you recommend they do?
Yeah, I think a great starting point is because, just diving into some of these conversations can be really scary, especially if you've never had these conversations before, really putting yourself out there and I guess being willing to like sit in your privilege or recognize your privilege or be vulnerable. So I actually think this is where social media and the internet can be a really great place to start, right? So even learning basic terms of like, LGBT. So like, what is LGBT? What are some of those terms mean? And just kind of starting with the basic education could be a really great place to start if you're feeling uncomfortable really diving right in. I think trying to then kind of being willing to be vulnerable and engage in some of those conversations. So maybe it's first with your roommate or somebody else that you work with on campus or involved with on campus. Maybe it's with a staff member on campus that you look up to really be willing to have those conversations and enter those conversations with an open mind. So not that I'm going to go in there and tell you all about me, but how can I learn from this other person and I guess really value their experience and their perspective. I think that being involved in different types of service projects, right? So connecting with people in the community and off campus who have different experiences than you can be really, really important. But not just going and engaging in all of these different things, but taking the time to reflect on them. And so as an undergrad, I was really lucky to have supervisors who were always asking me questions that forced me to reflect in ways that I never had thought about before. And so whether that's finding that person to, I guess, be your reflection accountability partner or that staff member, to really reflect in those ways. So those would be kind of my tips to start with. Yeah. And I guess just making a commitment to yourself to be willing to do that and willing to put yourself out there because it can be a tough thing to start. Yeah.
Most definitely. And I think that now you're the second person that we've talked to that's stressed the importance of not just going out and doing things, but also being able to reflect on them and what they mean, and how they affect the people around you. So 2 mentions, that means it's important.
Hopefully.
I think so. I think it's good to be able to put things in context to the environment that you're in and your experience overall, and then where some of the lessons that you learn from those things can be applied in other situations. And a lot of that comes not in the moment when you're doing it, but later on when you think about what it means. So absolutely.
Yeah, that's kind of the whole goal is, right? So, where are you taking these skills and applying them to other things when you leave your institution or your student organization or whatever kind of context you're using it in? I think that if we're not doing that, then we're really not doing our job. So.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So my last question for you. So Lead365, we're book people. We love to read. I call us Read 365 sometimes just because we're so into books.
Of course.
If someone wanted to learn a little bit more about these concepts, so about social justice in general and what that means, how they can incorporate it into their leadership style, do you have anything that they should be adding to their reading list?
Yeah, so I actually uploaded a bunch of different references on the questions that you sent me. So I'll probably won't be able to talk about all of them, but one of the first texts that I read as an undergrad, I was really lucky to take a leadership and service learning class during my undergrad career. And so a lot of people have read this book, but it's exploring leadership for college students who want to make a difference. It's a pretty well-known text, but I think for me, that was the first time that I really read something that spoke to the things I believed and experienced around leadership. And I think it does a really great job of even talking about the importance of privilege, of social justice, and some of those things that's a little bit more accessible for for most undergraduate students. So I think that's a text that I still stand by and I love. And then Leadership for a Better World, which talks about the social change model. For more of like a research point of view, I am always reading stuff from the multi-institutional study of leadership. So different things from John Dugan, different things from the National Clearinghouse for Leadership Programs. And I do try to look a lot on different things on social media. So articles that people are posting, different hashtags, like I think there's essay leads, leadership, all that sort of stuff. And then trying to find more and more, recently I've been trying to find more and more about, the intersections of feminism and leadership. And so just, I have a lot of great friends who always share articles. So always trying to read those sorts of things. But yeah, the rest, I just posted a giant laundry list of things that came to mind and really resonated with me. So maybe you could just post the references as well.
Definitely post that list for those interested in learning more. Yeah. That will be posted along with this video so you can follow up, see what Lauren's reading and what you might want to add to your list.
Yeah, and please, I would love if you have recommendations. I read the list that you all posted and added some more to my summer reading list. So I'm always happy to get more books to read.
Fantastic. We are always happy to help out with that. And I'm sure that our partner, the National Clearinghouse on Leadership Programs, would be very pleased to hear that you're getting a lot of good stuff out of their resources.
Always. Yes.
Pass that note along.
Yes.
All right. Well, it's been great talking to you, Lauren.
Thank you.
Wonderful chatting with you, learning more about social justice and how we can incorporate it into our leadership styles day to day. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, so that's all for us today. We will be back with you in future conversations with more people talking about leadership, living leadership, and showing you how to incorporate it into your everyday practice. So thanks everybody very much, and take care.